Welcome into Basketball by Association. My name is Arky. That is Joel C. Cortez. Joel, the password for today is fun. We're going to have some fun on this podcast.
Yep, fun with 3 to 7 N's at the end of it. Just to keep things, a little unguessable. And it's so fun of an episode. This is episode 74, Arky, Shea, and no player in NBA history has ever worn the number 74. So if you are listening on the audio versions of this, iTunes, Spotify, Spreaker, wherever you get your podcast, thank you for doing that. And of course, if you want the video version, there's a few of you who are over there, but not enough. There's not enough watching on the video side. So go on over to YouTube, subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. But if you are over there as well, you get to be part of perhaps, and my memory fails me, so maybe I could be wrong here, but I think this might be the biggest name that we've ever had for an episode naming, because there's no jersey 74. So we got to go to the year 1973/74 dash, I suppose. And we could have chosen Rookie of the Year, and that would have been all fun and nice and all that stuff. But we're going to choose the MVP from the 73/74 season. And again, your hint here, Arky, Shea, is that it's probably the biggest name we've done as an episode name. We tried to be obscure for a little while and then fun at other times, but now we're going to go big because this guy deserves it. He made the All-Star game every single year of his career, save one. There was 1 year that he missed it. I don't want to give too many other clues away because it'll become real obvious otherwise.
Okay. God, I know that stat too. You say he was the MVP? 73/74?
MVP in 73/74. They're I'm not going to give any other clues. This may or may not have been his only MVP.
I can't even remember if it 73/74. We're talking Kukoc? No, we're going. Is that Kareem?
It's Kareem, baby.
Kareem, baby!
The captain.
Woo!
So, I mean, the other clue was that made the All-Star game in every season but one, and there were a lot of seasons to choose from for this. I mean, the dude played from the time he was 22 until 41, and at an insanely high level. And you know what's crazy? The year that he did not make the All-Star game, he appeared in 62 games. So you would think that would be enough to get you in. The dude still averaged almost 26 points and 13 boards a game and did not make the All-Star game that one season. I would be fuming mad if I were him, because show me the guys that got in ahead of him.
What a schlub. What a schlub that season. Is it true he only has one MVP?
That I have to look at. That would also be a shamakery if true.
Oh, I thought you said if he only.
No, I said it may or may not. I didn't want to give away. He definitely should have multiple MVPs here.
Okay.
But I do not actually know how many. So let's go and look here real quick at Kareem's. Thank you, Basketball Reference, by the way. You guys are the best. So he has an MVP in 70-71. That's the year he also won a championship and got the finals MVP. He was MVP in 71-72, 73-74, so including this season, 75-76, 76-77, again in 79 and 80, and he was the finals MVP in 1985. So a full 14 years separate from the first time he had gotten finals MVP. That is a person who is relatively okay at basketball.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if my ear, I guess you were just sort of throwing out the hint without giving away the whole basket. I was going to say, the guy who scored more than God, basically, on and off the court, was only an MVP once, but no, that's clearly not true. So, today's Basketball by Association is going to be a lot of fun because we get to talk about the new dream team. That's right. Well, the one that I feel like they had all okay. The Los Angeles Lakers have a brand new player, and he might as well have been playing with the dream team because this team feels like they've been playing since '92 based on all their players. Rajon Rondo has signed a $2.5 million deal after being bought out by Memphis. Again, we basically said
We predicted.
Yeah, not all these players are going to be here by the time we get to the start of the season, and we're not even through August. So he is now going to get his full $7.5 million. He agreed to the buyout from Memphis. The Lakers are going to pay $2.5 million, and he will go to a very old, experienced, veteran-laden Los Angeles Lakers team.
Seasoned, you might say.
Very well seasoned. In fact, maybe 2 seasons.
Fully seasoned.
Los Angeles Laker team. Does this move the needle for the Lakers, do you think? What are your assessments of, I think this is their final roster spot, if I'm not mistaken, for the Lakers, and it goes to King Rajon.
The Lakers are so old that 70% of the seasoning is just pure MSG, people. That's old school recipe here.
Let's take it.
Yeah, delicious MSG. Does Rajon Rondo move the needle? No. And the hope is that he doesn't have to move the needle, right? Sure. He's at that point where you and I talked about him when he got traded from the Clippers. We said it was kind of unfortunate because he still can be helpful. He still can give you some good minutes. We've seen playoff Rondo a time or 3, even in the last few seasons, where he'll give you like one big game in a series out of nowhere where he's really controlling the tempo and he's knocking down 3-pointers, which is just a game changer when that happens. But those minutes become fewer and fewer. He becomes more and more of a defensive liability if the jump shot isn't working, which, to his credit, this is clearly a guy who continues to work on his jump shot. It's never going to be great, but he continues to work on it. And there's kudos in that. So Rondo's got leadership ability. Sometimes it's abrasive and rubs people the wrong way. However, he's been with the Lakers. I thought it was maybe a bad sign when they let him walk, whereas maybe he had been there for that year. He won the championship and everyone's like, yeah, we're good. We don't need another, helping of Rajon Rondo. And that's why they let him go to the Clippers. Maybe that was not the case after all. And it was business is business. It doesn't do much other than add to that list of names of guys who have been there, done that, are going to have a very valuable perspective no matter what's going on, where if you have to put them in the game mentally, they're not going to screw things up. Whether physically they can keep up with the young elite teams in the league, you don't know, but you just hope that Rajon Rondo is a peripheral piece. And that if he does have to get in and fill in because Westbrook is missing a game or 2 here, that you still got LeBron, you still got Anthony Davis, you got a healthy Dwight Howard and Carmelo Anthony and blah, 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 all these different players that Malik Monk is not playing like he's a youngster. Kendrick Nunn is playing well. If those things are happening, then yeah, Rajon Rondo can come in and still dish the ball and run the offense and you got no problem. The one big concern with these Lakers is when you got so many guys that are old, some of whom have very questionable injury histories as of late.
Seasoned.
When you have that, you are susceptible to that domino effect of injuries, which we saw with the Lakers last year. And all of a sudden, your skeleton crew is not only undermanned, like any skeleton crew would be, but old and undermanned, and that's where it can get really ugly.
And literally skeletons, like
right?
I mean, it's you're talking about the depth being. You want to go light on the minutes for probably early in the season. You want to sort of see how you can string that along.
Osteoporosis becomes a major medical concern.
It does, and so when you see, Rajon Rondo and Russell Westbrook on the not the non-active list for that night, and on the side it does not say coach's decision, it just says mall walking, then you know what's going on. You know that they had to get their mall walking miles in, and
if I'm the Lakers, I double down on this, Arky, and the fact that Rajon's back and Anthony Davis is still there. You might as well bring DeMarcus Cousins back in off the scrap heap, who has spent some time there.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like Marc Gasol is going to finish things out with the Lakers. That's still up in the air. He might not. My guess is if he commits to actually coming back, they're going to trade him immediately for something else because the vibe just didn't seem to work there. And that's been rumored for a while. It's also rumored that Mark may choose to retire, quote unquote, from the NBA and go back to Spain to do another year or 2 there to finish out his career like his brother Pau has done. I don't think there's any shame in that either way. But if that happens, the Lakers could use one more center body, and you might as well go with DeMarcus Cousins at this point, because you think about, not that it really matters, but the sheer number of all-star games and MVPs and craziness on this roster from from 10 years ago, especially, but even just over the last decade, it is impressive. And we have seen teams like this win before. We've seen it flame out horrifically, but when it works, it can be really good.
So Matt Williams is someone who's a researcher for ESPN, and he put this tweet out a few hours before we were recording that LeBron, Carmelo, Gasol, Dwight, Russell Westbrook, and Rajon Rondo were all All-Stars in 2012, which was the year before Anthony Davis came into the NBA. And guess what? They're all on the same team now in Los Angeles. That is quite the ball club that's going on there. Is there a potentially more volatile backcourt when they get onto the court at the same time as Rajon and Russ? I mean, they're probably going to fight each other, much less anybody else. Like, to be honest with you,
attitude-wise, chip on the shoulder-wise,
yes,
savvy-wise, yeah, that's fun. I didn't even think about that combo just because I don't know how much of those two.
Oh, they're not. They're not
be on the court.
I just think it's together. Going to be
fun. If that ever happens, great. But I think the plus minus is going to say not so great, because both of those guys have been eyeball test versus, advanced stat pariahs here, where the eyeball test says good things are happening, and then the advanced stats continue to tell this different story year after year for like the last 5 seasons, where their team is actually better with them not on the court. And it really is hard to keep fighting that. You can say, I think for a smaller sample size, yeah, advanced stats aren't everything, but when you start to get the larger body of evidence, I know if I was Frank Vogel, I would not put those two out there at any point unless I absolutely had to. I don't think there's any, because again, you think of like Russ's shooting woes and the fact that Rajon is very much a wild card from outside. There's no lineup that you can put around them elsewhere to really overcome that and then still be effective defensively on top of it. So this is where like Rajon Rondo is an insurance policy, but he's an insurance policy for like one room in your house, not the whole house.
Well, I do know that it's official. The Lakers are the team most likely to repeat the Malice in the Palace or a Rudy Tomjanovich situation. Like they are now number one on the betting odds as far as who is more likely to have that happen in this season. And you know what? It makes the Lakers more watchable for me because I'd like to see a brawl.
I think there will be chippiness. There will be picking at people, but to their credit, like Rondo was a dirty player early on, and some of that has gone away where it's like crafty versus like sheer dirtiness. And Russ plays hard and gets fouls and yaps at people and can get technicals, but neither of those guys have ever been like dirty, like legit fight,
not dirty, just
so I don't see a Rudy T issue or Malice in the Palace with these guys, but they're going to be high on the technical list. I'll give you that.
Just like don't rule it out.
You got Carmelo and Dwight on this team as well, and both of those guys,
there's going to be some words.
They'll get in a ref's ear. Dwight especially, like the refs are just done with him. And yet that is another reason that DeMarcus Boogie Cousins
bring him back
to be on this team, because you think of all the years that DeMarcus was like leading the league in techs and it wasn't even close. Oh, yeah. You might as well, right? You might as well just double down on it at this point.
Our friend Bo Estes, by the way, from NBA TV, brought up the fact that this now makes 7 players on the Lakers roster who were born while Ronald Reagan was president. And
interesting.
That is, again, they're seasoned. They're seasoned. They're a very seasoned basketball team. So,
Arky, you asked me this a week or two ago, and I don't know if I ever returned the question. Are the Lakers your presumptive favorite in the Western Conference at this time. We know Vegas loves him, but of course Vegas is going to do that. We know that the media is going to love him because of course the New York and LA based media are going to do that. But I mean, not that the Rondo signing wouldn't necessarily sway your mind one way or the other, but where are you sitting with them right now?
Oh, I don't think they're the favorite. I don't like them. I don't like them at all, especially because the big unknowns are age, B, LeBron coming back from his first sort of major or second major injury. First, has really slowed him down, and we didn't get to see a full recovery from LeBron, and we don't know, like how much that ankle is going to be a deal or how much pep that's going to take out of the step. But those are my two big ones. Like the thing is, like there's been so much roster turnover from the Lakers every year for LeBron that like it feels like he's just trying to patch. I shouldn't say he, but he's probably got some say. Seems to be so much patchwork trying to figure out: is it old? Is it youth? Is it experience? Is it scoring? Is it defense? Like what are we going to have to do? We being LeBron and the Lakers to sort of get back to the title. They did it 2 years ago. What gets you back to that? I mean, I don't know. This is a team that was playing great defense last year down the stretch, getting into the playoffs, and then they got toasted and roasted by Phoenix in the first round. So. And we've seen that roster's completely flipped. So like I don't think you can just because LeBron and Anthony Davis, yeah, they're great players, but they were on the team last year too. So I don't know. They're reduced as far as health wise too. And that's why coming out the gate, like I'm more likely to like someone like Phoenix to go back and repeat than I do like the LeBron led Lakers to go back and get back to the Western Conference Finals and beyond. So.
Wes Matthews and Marc Gasol would be returning if they come back to the Lakers, but that's not a given. Talon Horton-Tucker was obviously on the team last year. But other than that, you're right. Like the names that are coming in, Dwight Howard played with LeBron previously on this Lakers team, but it wasn't last year.
Mm-hmm.
Ditto for Rondo. I don't believe...
Right. Russ not on that team, right?
Yeah, Russ and... Russ has played, and so did Dwight Howard, has played with LeBron and Anthony Davis on the Dream Team before. Same thing with Carmelo Anthony. So they've all played together in a sense, but that's been a while ago and in very different circumstances, obviously. I don't believe Kent Bazemore's time with the Lakers, because he's another Laker that's returning. I don't believe that overlaps with when LeBron was actually there. Trevor Ariza ditto, that's another Laker coming back, but hasn't played with LeBron. And then you got a couple of younger guys in Nunn and Monk who for sure haven't. Wayne Ellington hasn't. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of unknowns. That's fairly typical for a lot of teams, but you're right. A team with championship aspirations, shuffling the deck hard like this. We've seen a lot of LeBron teams do that almost every year. Some years it's really worked. Other years it's been a disaster, or has been a clearly sinking ship where you were just patching and patching and patching. And somehow, because LeBron was so good, you still got to the NBA Finals. I'm thinking of his last year with the Cavaliers, for example. That was a nightmare mess of a team that did not deserve in either iteration. Because remember, they traded like everybody at the trade deadline. They didn't really deserve to get to the finals, but LeBron was that good. And Kevin Love was good enough that they were able to get back to it. But no Kyrie that year, and that was when they tried to experiment with Dwayne Wade on the team and so forth. So you're right. This feels like it could be that sort of a year, but there's been a lot of years where there's a ton of veterans and it does work out, and LeBron's either gotten a ring out of it or at least a finals appearance.
Listen, I think it could be good. I mean, I think they can be good, but I mean, the big question mark I have is literally LeBron James for the first time on having to come back from an injury that severely hampered the way he was able to at first come back. Because remember, he tried to come back before the playoffs, and he was just a shell of himself. Like he just wasn't the same guy, and he at least needed more time. And listen, the dude's 100 now compared to what he was. Like he's been in the league since 2003, right, when he was drafted. Yeah. So like that's 18 years ago, man, and being in the playoffs almost every single year. Like,
you're pushing Kareem levels now at this point, right?
It's a lot of mileage on a guy that finally get this kind of injury this late in his career. We've talked about on this podcast how much he's sort of been a Superman that's sort of been immune to that injury, the big injury that's sort of marked the precipitous decline in his production. maybe that was his. I mean, I don't know. I don't have enough sample size to say that I just like the Lakers bringing in a whole bunch of dudes that like to ride banana boats with them and guys that we heard of from the 2012 All-Star team to come say, hey, it's time to win a championship again. So time's going to tell on that. The Toronto Raptors. Okay, I'm not going to ask for your leniency on this name. I'm going to demand it. So the Toronto Raptors signed to a 2-year deal. Svi Mykhailiuk. Now hold on. Let me now. I listen to so many pronunciations of this name, and you know what ruins names for me is when the broadcast team for the Pistons, when he was on the Pistons, called him one name. Then you go to when he was Kansas, and they ask him literally, "How do you pronounce your name?" And then he gives you the entire name, and it's in that thick Russian accent. You have no idea. Now you're completely lost. So, Svi.
Well, Spy isn't even his full name. But
no, it's Vyacheslav. It's Vyacheslav.
Mykhailiuk. Okay, we're using basketball reference here again. People go to basketball-reference.com. It's the best.
But that's not even how he pronounces the name. That's how like the Detroit broadcasters.
Sviatoslav Mykhailiuk.
Yeah, so that's how the
Detroit
broadcasters pronounce his name, but he pronounces it like with a harder K, like regardless. Okay, he's a good player. He's gonna make you a whole bunch of threes. He's a good wing there. What do you think as far as Svi's the free agent deal with the Raptors? And what do you think? We've literally never brought him up until now on this broadcast.
No, we haven't, and there's a reason for this. I don't think he's a very good NBA player. I think he's a very good overseas player. Okay. Now, granted, he's only 23 years old, and he's going to continue to get looks like this. He did partial season with the Lakers beginning in 2018, 2019. Then with Detroit, he did 2.5 seasons with Detroit before they gave up on him, and then went to OKC. He did 1 season there where, yes, he averaged 10 points per game. Yes, he shot 54% from the field and 34% from downtown. This is a shooter
mm-hmm.
who 34% from downtown.
He's a volume shooter. I'll grant you that. Like, he's a volume guy.
This is multiple times now in his career that he has shot under 35% as a shooter.
Listen, you wanted that number higher. I get it. I understand.
Well, he's not a great defender. He doesn't bring much else to the table. He's grabbed a couple rebounds per game when he's played. He's had a couple assists per game. So there might still be something there. I'm not saying you give up on this guy. However, if 2 of the worst teams in the league, so 2 teams that need prospects, that need building blocks, in the last 2 years have given up on him for nothing, just let him walk and go somewhere else, that is a major concern for me. If a Lakers team that needed bodies and needed shooting in 28-19 watched for 39 games and said, yeah, we're good, and then moved on, there's starting to be a track record here, and that's why I have major concerns. Toronto is definitely in NBA hell right now, where they're one of those teams that's good enough to hang around the playoff picture, but probably isn't going to make it in because they've been surpassed. It's been a long time since they won that championship already. So it doesn't hurt for them to bring in more shooting. Shooting is at a premium, but there are certain guys who are shooters, and there are certain guys who have the reputation of being a shooter. And Svi right now is squarely in that second camp. And I think if this Toronto experiment doesn't work, you're going to see him back overseas by the following season. And that may just be where he's better suited at this point. He's not a bad player, but I don't know if he's an actual NBA player.
Well, I don't completely disagree with you on a lot of what you say there. Again, his production really is in volume. He's a bit turnover machine. He's not very good with the ball. Again, I'd like to not poo on him the entire time we're talking about him. But again,
I mean, I'll say this: when you got a kid who's 6'7", shot the ball well at Kansas, has shown flashes as a volume, that is the type of guy that you take a chance on and you give multiple chances with, because if he turns into something,
yes,
that's exactly what you want.
it could be a diamond in the rough that just took a little time to sort of mature and to find a spot that sort of works well for him. His 2-year deals for like $1 million, like just under $2 million a year. So I mean, you're not losing whole lot of money if you're Toronto, sort of trying to invest in this guy and just see,
And he came over a little early, right? I mean, he came over as a 21-year-old. Obviously, he had been
21,
at Kansas. Yeah, he had been at Kansas. Probably was a guy who could have benefited from staying in college for another year or going overseas, what have you. Felt like he didn't really know the NBA game yet. And you think of somebody like Joe Harris. Harris was a 4-year college player. He was in over his head with that reputation as a shooter, bounced around for a little bit. Same thing happened to JJ Redick at the beginning of his career. And then the footing was found and the light bulb went on and good things happened. But for all those examples, there's plenty of other examples of young shooters where it just never clicked either. So
this will, by the way, these next 2 years will be the most money he's ever made. So I think he was on like he was made like $950 a year ago, and then before that was like $1.5 million, and then the year before that was like another just under $1 million. So he's going to get a chance for another nearly $4 million to sort of bring in, and who knows? I mean, now he does have a very strict cannot trade me until December 15th thing in his contract. So you have to at least give him to almost Christmas to figure out if you want to move him, which is not really that much time when you think about it, but it's almost be pretty quick. Be like, oh yeah. Like if you see Toronto trading him early in the season, it's because they knew pretty quickly that this was just not going to be a thing for them. So, goes 5. I mean, I'll shoot for you. Listen, a 6'7" guy who can make some threes, but shoots a bunch of them. Yeah, why not? Why not? Again, those big wings are what people want in the NBA right now, right? Like those big wings that can shoot, I should say. And he's shown small flashes, right? Small flashes. And I should say he's not Russian; he's Ukrainian. And we're in the neighborhood, but I don't want to denigrate.
Yeah, they definitely do not want to be called Russian.
I do not want to denigrate Phi you know how like you hear a name and like you're listening to it and you say it over and over again, then you hear another pronunciation of it, even though you committed to the other one and now you're just ruined on it. I'm ruined. I want to say how the Pistons broadcaster said it and how you said it. How do you say it, Joel?
Well, now I got to go back to.
Okay, I thought you.
No, here we go. It is Mihailuk.
Mihailuk, right?
Mihailuk.
Mihailuk. Yep. But if you listen to him pronouncing it, it's when he got on campus at Kansas, it's just going to ruin you. It's just You're not going to say Mihailuk. You'll go much thicker.
Well, yeah. I mean, I suppose if he's got his accent with it, and there
it hurts.
Different emphases, but saying that's being said in the actual Ukrainian language,
right?
Versus being said in English.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it doesn't hurt the accent. It just hurts me trying to get my pronunciation back to a level where I'm trying to be at least somewhat respectful of the young man.
Let me say this. If we collectively as a society learned how to pronounce Giannis's full name,
and we did,
we can learn for Spy.
We can learn for Spy. Well,
we don't have to, but we can.
Once he gives us the reason, right? I guess then we're gonna have to all learn Mihailuk. Okay. The 76ers have waived Anthony Tolliver since we last spoke. Big deal to you? Little deal? Nothing?
Nothing deal. Tolliver is a guy who has gone from long-term journeyman in his career. He's pushing up there now for like most teams played with. He's getting to be on that list and usually playing like 1 or 2 seasons for anybody. But now he's moved over the last couple years to just a guy that you bring into camp and you put on your playoff roster. And that's what he was last year for Philly. He is the older version of what Mike Scott gives them, which is, 6'8", 6'9" forward, little bit lanky, can run the floor, but is mostly just a shooter from the corners. Tolliver has never been a terrible defender. He's usually been good enough. And now he's got that seasoned veteran stuff going on with him where a team will bring him in and know they can trust him having minutes versus maybe that guy from the G League who was on a 2-way contract with them that they don't really want on the playoff roster. So no, this doesn't move the needle for the Sixers. The more interesting bit of news for Philadelphia, of course, is that again, smoke continues to be out there that Ben Simmons will not be
Well, hold
on
on.
the Sixers roster, but we'll find out.
Let me wrap up Tolliver
Yeah.
just for a quick second, and then we can get to that.
Right.
He's 35 real quick. Played 11 games last year, almost 2 points a game. Yeah, like you said, it's not the biggest thing, but I did like, and I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to bring this up too. Here are his landing spots so far: San Antonio, Portland, Golden State, Minnesota, Atlanta, Charlotte, Phoenix, Detroit, Sacramento, Detroit again, Minnesota again, Portland, Sacramento, Memphis, Philadelphia. Yeah, he's almost got all of them.
So Anthony Tolliver is one of the most liked guys in the league, period. Not only by like fellow players, but by front offices. And everywhere he goes, everybody's happy to see him. So this is, again, another one of those instances of proof where if you're a good dude, if you are a team player, you can have a long, productive career, because Anthony Tolliver, when he is done, is going to wind up in somebody's player development program as an assistant coach, or he may get a broadcasting job or a front office job. He could be on the union side of things for the player. Like, he has had that interpersonal effect and backed it up with a lot of hard work, because he was an unheralded player who's hung around in the league this long based on his hard work. That goes a long ways. And that's one of those kind of intangible things that you wish younger players, especially the ones that really like just kind of rub people the wrong way, would understand sooner, that it does matter. Those relationships matter over time. And it's not just that your talent has to be so big, and if it's that great, then you can just be a jerk to everybody, because eventually that career starts to wind down. It comes to an end. And if people just flat out didn't like you, you don't have the opportunities to stay in the game that a guy like Anthony Tolliver is going to have. He will basically be able to do whatever he wants within the league, barring the right amount of training and that sort of thing, but he'll be around for as long as he wants to be in the league. And that's, even if it's not as a player, that's really hard to come by for a lot of people, especially somebody who was an unheralded, non-big name player.
Would you like to take a guess at what, in the 13 seasons, what good guy Anthony Tolliver has amassed contracts-wise?
In 13 seasons?
Mm-hmm.
25 million?
$35 million.
Okay.
That's not bad, considering like his first salary was $41,000. Yeah, which has markedly gone up. His biggest 1 year haul was 2016 from Sacramento, where he got $8 million. But I think last year he only netted from the 76ers on a couple of contracts, like $600,000, no, $500,000, something like that.
Yeah, he's long been a minimum contract guy.
Yeah.
One from Sacramento may have been a mid-level exception type of deal, but you notice it was just for the 1 year. They needed bodies in there, and they needed to spend that money some way. So you bring in a good locker room guy like Tolliver, and you're paying for that for him to come to a bad team at that point versus choosing a good team. And he probably took the money, and rightfully so.
You already alluded to Ben Simmons and the update around him that it looks like, if you believe Shams Charania from The Athletic, who is pretty right on for the most part, he's reporting that they're still working on, are the Sixers, getting rid of Ben Simmons before their training camp starts at the end of September. The Sixers apparently asking price is pretty steep. And Charania, now what I'm about to read to you is the quote from Charania's report, okay? Simmons was almost moved to the Rockets with Matisse Thybulle and 2 first-round picks of the James Harden negotiations. But then, of course, Harden went to Brooklyn. Previous trade talks came to close, moving Simmons out of Philadelphia, coupled with the comments of Joel Embiid and Doc Rivers to end the season. The writing is on the wall. The Timberwolves have been motivated to find a deal for Simmons, but would likely require a third team given their asset pool of Malik Beasley, Jaden McDaniels, and D'Angelo Russell. May not be good enough for the 76ers. And another team, according to Shams Charania, the Portland Trailblazers, who sources tell him that they are very interested in a Damian Lillard, Ben Simmons trade. But the Trailblazers, as of right now, look like they are trying to build around Damian Lillard going for the future. Damian Lillard is still looking at what his present and early or soon to be future is with the Portland Trailblazers. So, of course, it all is under the guise of we will see. But if somehow the 76ers were able to get rid of Ben Simmons from that team and Damian Lillard's in the hall back, I mean, I might be liking Philadelphia again this year to make it out of the East.
If I can get Damian Lillard for Ben Simmons in any, and I'm keeping Joel Embiid, I pull that trigger immediately. I sort the rest of it out. I go down swinging with that roster, whether Tobias Harris is on it or not. If you got to get rid of Harris as part of the deal for it, you do it. You just flat out do it. Now,
because if you're Philadelphia, you don't have that guy right now, right? Like you don't have there's almost no Damian Lillard type guys out there, right? But if you could bring in that dog, that dude, that take over the moment, that scoring threat, that's the piece that I think would legitimize Philadelphia a lot more to a lot of people, and I think would make them a stronger threat, even though they were really good. And you and I think we both thought that they would come out of the East last year when we saw the playoff matchups. I would be very hesitant to bet against them next year.
Not only that, but you have a guy who is as fiery and as chippy as Joel Embiid is. And for a long time, it was said, well, maybe the fire and ice type of combo of Embiid and Simmons can work because they are opposite personalities. They've got very opposite demeanors when they play. But then there's been, kind of long running rumors about them not really getting along all that well, maybe because of those differences. And one would have to imagine that it might be a situation where, like, Kobe was upset at Dwight Howard because he didn't think Dwight took things seriously. And is that the way that Embiid feels about Simmons? We don't know. And of course, they'll never admit to that. But there's been a lot of tea leaves. So I think Lillard makes a ton of sense there. If you're the Portland Trailblazers, of course, what you're doing is trying to get Ben Simmons while offering up CJ McCollum and one other piece instead. There's no way that Philadelphia is going to have interest in Yusuf Nurkic. Portland's got some other decent young players, but nobody enough to warrant Ben Simmons, the theoretical appeal of Ben Simmons right now in return. So then you're talking a third team or what have you. And that's kind of where Minnesota is on this as well. But yeah, if you can get Damian Lillard, do it. I don't care what else it costs. As long as you're keeping Embiid, clear the decks and get Lillard in there and go forward with that. And like I said, whether that's Tobias Harris, whether that's Tybal, any of those other guys are expendable, including Shake Milton, Tyrese Maxey. The problem is that Portland knows that,
Would Portland be interested? Like, do you think that, and again, I know it's a superstar league, so the superstar can sort of force the hand to a degree, but let's just sort of take that off the table for a moment. All things being equal, Dame's willing to play there. Not going to be an issue kind of guy. Portland want to sort of reset like this, sort of lose a guy that clearly is your franchise right now, to sort of reset the deck and make a push with new pieces, a couple of new pieces, one very often made fun of piece that may have been just sort of an odd fit in the situation he was in. Like, is Portland interested enough because Ben Simmons may be a better fit there?
So much depends on whether you're the Blazers and you believe that Lillard is going to walk. If he's going to walk, then a return of Ben Simmons, Tyrese Maxey, Matisse Thybulle, maybe Harris if you really want to get the numbers working, though you're going to have to give up some of your bigger pieces in that too. But with or without Harris and then a first-round draft pick or two, I think you pull the trigger on that deal because still of what Ben Simmons could become, because Maxey is a very intriguing prospect, and Matisse Thybulle is going to be an all-NBA defender multiple times in his career. The one downside of that is the same downside of why the Sixers would be getting rid of those three guys. Simmons and Tybalt flat out can't shoot, and Maxey is a very big work in progress from the shooting department. So if you're the Blazers, you do have other shooters around, and CJ McCollum, Norman Powell, Robert Covington, who has been very streaky himself. You've got some guys on the roster who can do that, but you get rid of Dame Lillard, really you're wanting to hand the keys of the car to Anthony Simons, and you're mixing signals there when you bring in Ben Simmons, who probably still would run point guard, not power forward, and Tyrese Maxey, who also is a ball handler. So it's not a perfect fit for Portland, and that's why maybe a third team does need to get involved, even if you're the Blazers, to try to get them the pieces that they need. But I think Maxey and Tybalt have a lot of value within the league right now. Milton has some value, and Tobias Harris has some value, but probably lesser so than those top two. And Simmons, it just really depends on how a team feels about him and whether they think that this is salvageable or he is a big price player with a lot of talent that is really actually a supporting guy in everything but pedigree.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. September 28th is when they open up camp. Where is Dame Lillard?
With the Blazers.
Where is Ben Simmons?
I hope Minnesota is able to make it work, but I don't know how that happens.
Would you like him on Minnesota's roster?
I would love it, and I would probably prefer him over D'Angelo Russell, for example, but I don't know how the Wolves can get Ben Simmons and still protect Anthony Edwards. Obviously, the Sixers have no use for Karl Anthony Towns when they've got Embiid. Mm-hmm. So the guy that they'd be trying to get is Anthony Edwards. And if I had to choose between the two, no, I want Edwards over Simmons at this point. I've seen enough already in one season to know that's the guy I want. But am I willing to, part with D'Angelo Russell and Malik Beasley? Absolutely. Jaden McDaniels and Jared Vanderbilt, especially McDaniels, are both very intriguing prospects at the forward position, but also very raw and could go either way. So they're not untouchable in something like this. But I don't know that Minnesota's got enough to make that happen. And that's where that third or fourth team needs to be involved, because I don't think Philadelphia is all that interested in Russell. They could be in Malik Beasley. He could play a part there and actually might fit kind of nice with Philly, but they've already got Seth Curry. They've already got frickin' Kork Maz at that shooting guard spot. So,
okay. Since we're on Portland, let me just I think wrap up with this sort of trade that happened over the weekend. The Bulls, Cavs, and Trailblazers popped up on a 3-team deal. Let's see. The Bulls got. Let's see. That's right. Yeah, the Bulls got Derrick Jones Jr., Portland's protected first rounder, and Denver's protected 2023 second rounder. The Cavs got Lauri Markkanen, and the Trailblazers got Larry Nance Jr. Who do you like coming out of that as far as best win on that deal?
I think it's the Cavs for getting Markkanen. That was a guy who was drafted very highly, thought of very highly, didn't stay healthy, was part of that Bulls absolute dysfunction over the last couple of years with Jim Boylan. Things solidified a little bit last year, but as the new regime comes in and kind of decides who they like and who works, it was clear that Markkanen was falling out of the picture. So he's kind of gotten a little bit of a raw deal. We're going to find out how much is self-inflicted. The problem is he goes from one bad team to another bad team with the Cavaliers that who knows what's going on with that roster. There's definitely some talent there, just like there were with those Bulls. And he very much becomes the logical replacement for what Kevin Love was supposed to be as your stretch 4 type of guy. I think he can work next to Jared Allen. He especially can work next to Isaac Okoro if Okoro is your stopper. So you think about like a starting 5 of Darius Garland, Colin Sexton, Isaac Okoro, Lauri Markkanen, and Jared Allen. That's a nice young 5 that you're going to see how, you're going to let them take their lumps and see how it goes. I'm totally okay with that. Larry Nance Jr., serviceable role player, and then some at times. Gets way more steals than you would think for a guy playing the power forward position. Portland is able to shuffle the deck just a little bit. I've got no problem with that because Robert Covington has been very up and down with them. It's another guy that can play next to Nurkic or play the center spot if they want to go small. They've got Nasir Little in that mix, who probably should get some minutes. So to me, bringing in Nance really puts the pressure on Robert Covington, because I think this is Little's job down the line. They've got a couple of other young prospects or guys that were supposed to be up and coming prospects, so they probably have bypassed the upside point of their career. Now, Rondae Hollis Jefferson, TJ Leaf, Harry Giles, all have been around the league a little bit, but all three of those guys were thought to really have a lot of potential at one point in their career. So Portland is just getting another look at somebody else. I got no problem with that. I'm not in love with it. I don't think it moves the needle. If I'm the Bulls, man, the best I could get for Lauri Markkanen, who again was taken by the Timberwolves, but was part of that Jimmy Butler trade and was with Zach LaVine coming over the Bulls. The best I could get was Derek Jones Jr. and a low pick. I know Lauri was the one kind of forcing their hand on this and demanding a trade, but Derek Jones Jr. is another one of those guys that sort of productive, definitely gives you a highlight here or there, but is he really better than a replacement level forward in the NBA? I don't think so.
Well, I think I am done with these news stories for now in free agency. Things have clearly slowed down. I would like to talk about Lauri Markkanen's new division when we start our division previews next week. You all right with that? Can we? You mind starting off with the defending champs division in the Eastern Conference with the Central Division? Can we get a little something going, Joel?
Absolutely, we can do that. And I just want to say before we go, circling things back to Anthony Tolliver, because this is just a fun little tidbit of information. The dude has played for 11 different teams in his career, and he's played for the Timberwolves twice, the Pistons twice, the Sacramento Kings 3 different times, and many of those teams that were listed, and there was a whole bunch of them that were interested in bringing him back, he's already appeared for. So willing to bring a guy back in the house, and it'd be really funny if he wound up on Sacramento again for a 4th tour of duty. At that point, just retire his number. I mean, who else you got, Kings? Besides Oscar Robertson, like, who else do you have to retire their number at this point? May add Chris Webber, I guess, but
in 13 seasons. That's a well-traveled man. 13 seasons. That's a lot of mileage on that guy's cards. All right, so next week we'll start our division previews and our team previews for the season. We've gotten the free agency pretty much nailed down. Not going to be any more big names except for maybe right before the season starts. We may see a blockbuster like we were just referring to with Dame Lillard, Ben Simmons. That may be a situation that provides itself a little bit of funk for the talk and the fodder. But until then, that'll be what we talk about next week. See if the defending champs can win that division again. Joe, I don't know if you know this, but the Bucks only won their division by 12 games last year. So skinning by the skin of their teeth, actually. So can they repeat? Could we see the mighty Chicago Bulls pop back up? Do a little something. The Pacers never fail. I don't know. We'll see. Like I think I'm gonna be a little higher on the Bulls than you're sort of laughing at right now, Joel C. Cordes.
The Bulls will be better. The Pacers might be respectable again, but spoiler alert: the Bucks are winning that division next year. Let's just take that right off the table right now. But the question is the more funner question is who gets second place in that division, and can said team make the playoff? Could you have 3 teams from that division make the playoffs? It's been a while since that has happened, and which team will actually be the worst, the Pistons or the Cavaliers?
Well, okay, I'll just spoiler alert: it's the Pistons. They're number 2 in that division. But also, like, that team, like, only because of the expanded playoffs did that division get 2 teams last year. Like, that's the only reason Indiana made it in. So if you look at it, like, I think the Atlantic got 4 in, right? Yeah, I think it was 4-1-3 if I'm not mistaken. I think the only team that didn't make it in the Atlantic was we were just talking about Toronto. Toronto, I think, was the only team that didn't make it out of the Atlantic. And then it would have been and by the way, normal playoff seeding type, not the expanded type, just the normal playoff.
And it's been a
And
long time since we could say that about the Atlantic. Remember for how long that was the Titanic division, right? You get like one team out of it.
Yeah, and that's good. That's probably going to be what the Central is this year, but maybe. But we'll talk about that coming up next week as we'll break down the defended champs division. In the meantime, Joel, we're on YouTube, right?
We are. Like, share, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. And if you want the audio only version, you can find us on Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast. This has been episode 74. Thank you, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
You're welcome.